Hello and welcome to another standard video. Today we're checking out this blue-black Doomsday Excruciator combo deck, which recently put 2 copies in the top 8 of Pro Tour Lorwyn Eclipsed, so it already has a proven track record in best of 3 standard. Today we're going to find out if it can also perform in the best of 1 ranked ladder. So our key build around is still Doomsday Excruciator, a 6 mana 6/6 demon with flying, saying when it enters, if it was cast, each player exiles all but the bottom 6 cards of their library face down. So we're now both left with a 6-card library, and then if we still control the Doomsday Excruciator at the beginning of our upkeep, we also get to draw an additional card, which is usually a drawback when you only have 6 cards left to work with, since if you end up drawing from an empty library before the opponent, of course you're going to lose the game. So ideally we have a different way of milling the opponent out after casting the Excruciator. You might remember some of my previous builds where we used Jace the Perfected Mind, which could already be on the battlefield, to then mill the opponent out completely after casting the Excruciator. Of course, Jace rotated out, but we still have some of the same win conditions. Once we cast Excruciator, we can maybe mill the opponent out using a Restless Reef, a creature land that for 4 mana can turn into a 4/4 creature with Death Touch, and when it attacks, target player mills 4 cards. So then with 1 attack from Restless Reef, it usually will take 2 turns for the opponent to end up drawing from an empty library. And then we also have 2 copies of Insatiable Avarice, which can be cast for triple black, saying a target player draws 3 cards and loses 3 life. So in the early game we can easily target ourselves and use it as a nice form of card advantage, since the mana base easily supports triple black. But once we cast our Doomsday Excruciator, we can now also target our opponent, make the opponent draw 3 and lose 3, and that's also going to speed up the process of milling them out, and will also usually win us the game. Can also use the additional spree mode, where we get to tutor up a specific card and put it on the top of our deck, so that can occasionally come in handy as well. And of course for 5 mana we get to choose both modes. Now again, all of these cards were already in standard before Lorwyn Eclipsed released, so why is this deck now just taking off? Well, that's mostly thanks to the addition of Deceit, which can be evoked for double blue or double black. The double blue mode gives us a bounce effect, useful against aggro. The double black mode gives us a discard effect, useful against control. Can maybe take a key counter spell or removal spell that might mess with our game plan. And then later for 6 mana we can cast a Deceit and get a 5/5 with both of those modes. Can maybe bounce a creature and make the opponent discard the very same card that we just bounced. And then the Deceit also pairs incredibly well with Kivero Mindbitten. In paper, this is Superior Spider-Man, which can now on turn 4, if we cast Kivero for double blue, double black, enter as a copy of Deceit, a 4/4, exile it in the process, and we also get to choose both of Deceit's modes, where we get to bounce and make the opponent discard, since we're technically casting the Deceit, so it also triggers any of their cast triggers. And the same also applies to Doomsday Excruciator. Since we're casting it out of the graveyard with Kivero, it now also will reduce everyone's library down to 6 cards, so we now get this effect for 4 mana potentially, as opposed to having to cast it for 6, which can make a huge difference. And then Lorwyn Eclipsed also introduced Requiting Hex as an efficient removal spell, which we had lost with rotation since Cutdown has been gone for a while, so now we get a very efficient 1 mana removal spell. And then another cute interaction with Requiting Hex in this deck is if you have 3 mana, you can maybe evoke a Deceit, and then before you sacrifice it, you can still blight onto it with Requiting Hex, gaining you 2 additional life in the process, so that's another cool interaction to keep in mind. Otherwise, we have some more removal with Bitter Triumph, can answer creatures and planeswalkers alike, and it also functions as a discard outlet, so we can maybe discard a Doomsday Excruciator if we have it in hand, and then cheaply get it back with Kivero. And then I'm also playing a Terminus of Return for additional mana acceleration. Can still cast a Requiting Hex with the mana from Terminus, so that's pretty efficient. And it can help set up a turn 4 Deadly Cover-Up, which is our sweeper of choice, and that can make a world of difference, being able to cast it a turn early against some of the aggro decks in the format, especially the green ramp decks, which can potentially threaten Craterhoof Behemoth in the meantime. And collecting evidence with Cover-Up can also be a form of graveyard hate, or can maybe extract a key piece out of the opponent's graveyard. And we're also pretty good at enabling collect evidence by discarding some of our expensive cards. Can also exile a Deceit that we maybe evoked earlier. And then a one-off Harvester of Misery, which also has good synergy with Kivero, since you can discard it early to give a creature -2/-2, and then later if we exile it with Kivero, it can once again give all creatures -2/-2. It's another very effective combo against any go-wide decks. And then we also have some additional card draw with Stock Up, which is great at assembling any of our 2-card combos. And then Winter Night Stories, another potential discard outlet for the Doomsday Excruciator. Can also get more value out of the graveyard with Harmonize. And then our mana base is of course heavily skewed towards black. Need to be able to hardcast our Doomsday Excruciator, so every land needs to be able to produce black mana. I did also include 2 copies of Cavern of Souls. Can sometimes be awkward if you're trying to hardcast Excruciator and you name something other than Demon, but of course a primary plan is to name Demon with it, but occasionally can also name Human to make an uncounterable Kivero, or maybe can name Elemental, can make it easier to have the double blue available for Deceit, so it still has its uses, but in the control matchups having access to an uncounterable creature can also make a huge difference. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw. We have what looks like a Keeper, Terminus to set up a turn 4 cover-up, and then maybe a turn 5 Excruciator. Still missing a Restless Reef to maybe mill the opponent out. And our opponent is on red aggro. So cover-up is going to be pretty important. Although we probably need some interaction before turn 4. And Needlehead is next. Well, Hex was ideal. Get to play Terminus, still cast a Hex. Likely going for the Needlehead, but we can wait and see. Hellkite represents another 4 damage. They also have a creature lane, so yeah, the sweeper's not at its most effective. Now Kivero is an interesting draw. I don't mind casting it just to present a blocker for Hired Claw. Can turn it into a Needlehead, since we don't have a discard outlet for the Excruciator. And then hopefully this can halt the attacks. Firebrand is next. Opponent could still maybe attack, pump, and use a shock on Kivero to finish it off, but they decide to hang back. Deceit was a pretty good draw. Won't be able to fully cast it yet. So now the question is, do I just play a tap land, a way to play Deceit for 6 mana? Maybe bouncing the Hellkite, making them discard. Or do I just make them discard now, and then next turn cast Excruciator, and hope that we can close out the game with it before we mill? I think I do make them discard now. And then maybe next turn I'll use the cover-up if they play the Hellkite. Burst Lightning goes face. Do they have another burn spell? Looks like it. Alright, that's too bad. So we didn't get any value here. Still gotta hang back. But next turn I can play Large Flyer that can also block the Hellkite, so I'm kind of hoping they don't draw the land. Another Firebrand. Could have been worse. So that puts me at a virtual 5/4 life with a Hired Claw trigger. Alright, Stock Up is interesting too. Think I gotta go for Excruciator, so I can at least block the Hellkite, otherwise I'm dead next turn. I guess with a cover-up I would maybe fall to 1, but that's not very comfortable either. Now we don't get to see what's face down in exile. Otherwise I could maybe use cover-up to speed up the milling process. So it's still a precarious situation, but I don't think I'm attacking with Kivero. Another Needlehead. Also painful with the Excruciator out. So I might have to cast a Sweeper. But that still leaves me dead to a top deck land. Another cover-up. And the Winter Night Stories, which we're definitely not gonna cast. Yeah, I don't think I have a choice. If I stock up, I get to see what's left. But that's just gonna speed up the milling. So I think this is an attack plus cover-up. Hope to extract a bunch of cards out of the opponent's deck. Can't exile their mountains, otherwise I would go for it. So that puts me to 3. So what makes sense to exile here? Firebrand and Needlehead are maybe the scarier top decks. Although we've already exiled an extra Needlehead, so they're more likely to have Hard Claws left than anything else. They had 1 Hard Claw, 2 lands, Scalding Viper, O'Hare, Ashonil. So if they draw one of the 2 mountains, I'm dead. To either Sanctuary or the Hellkite. O'Hare would be a fine top deck. Scalding Viper would also be okay. But the problem is, if they draw a mountain, I just die, and there's nothing I can really do about it. Unless one of my remaining cards is a Restless Reef. So I'm kind of thinking we keep the Hard Claw in the deck, and then hope to draw something. Because, yeah, at the moment, I don't see how this goes well for me. Alright, they drew O'Hare. That's an Undercity Sewers. Gotta cover up again. And then maybe play the Sewers just to see what's next. Deceit. Deceit does not solve the Hellkite problem. So I gotta hope that I have a mill effect coming up. And we have to collect evidence to exile the gods so they don't get the extra land here. So 50-50 to draw land. And it's a Scalding Viper. We have 1 card remaining, so I don't think I can win anymore. Needed to draw a Restless Reef a turn sooner. I guess there is still the Insatiable Avarice as a way to make the opponent draw 3. And wow, I can't believe it, it's actually our very last card. So now we can cast this targeting our opponent, making them draw 3 cards and lose 3 life. And then they'll have exactly 0 cards remaining, go to their draw step, and lose from drawing from an empty library. And they don't have any instant speed burn spells they can cast to close out the game beforehand. Wow, I can't believe we actually still got there. At 1 life, facing a Scalding Viper, so could not have been any closer. What a game. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We have Restless Reef for days. Would have liked an untapped land. But I think we can keep it. Bitter Triumph can discard Excruciator, maybe set up Kivero. Although never mind, with a turn 1 Ghost Vacuum, we can go through the graveyard. So that's going to be a bit of a nuisance. Opponent mono-white tokens. Double Ghost Vacuum, so they're definitely prepared for the graveyard decks. Well, there's no pressure at the moment. The Innocence, I'm going to have a hard time exiling with a cover-up to get rid of it for good. Because our opponent can keep our graveyards clean so we can't collect evidence. So I'll just stock up. Deceit could be alright. Was mostly just looking for additional mana sources, or with all the Restless Reefs we're not too worried about milling the opponent out. So I'll take the Terminus. And yeah, Kivero's not gonna do anything. Could take Harvester as an extra sweeper, but I kind of like the versatility of Deceit. Can maybe bounce the Innocents, make them discard it. So yeah, opponent's on top of making us discard. And yeah, I have to get rid of one card. I cannot believe I'm saying this. Might be a stock up. I don't really need any additional cards here. Can win with what we have in hand. But yeah, sometimes you don't need the stock up. So now I could go Terminus, have a look with Deceit, or I can just keep a Bitter Triumph. Can also answer Planeswalkers like Elspeth if that shows up in the near future. They might have a Seam Rip or an Exercise for the Terminus. Alright, so now we'll need an extra land after all. Still not in a hurry to answer the Innocents. I'm gonna keep this for a Planeswalker. Alright, so now we'll have to stock up. And then maybe land plus Avarice. Can be another way of milling the opponent if Restless Reef doesn't work somehow. Opponent makes a token, draws. Yeah, the Talent and the Innocence will turn into a drawback pretty soon once we cast the Excruciator. And we can go for it now already. I guess we do have to be careful with the level 3 pumping their team. Could be a reason to cast a cover-up first. Because the other opponent could have removal, get this to level 3, take 6, 7, 8. That would still be fine. Yeah, let's just go for it. So with 6 cards remaining, they will draw, have 5 cards left. So simply an attack from Restless Reef is not enough to win the game. This deck also cares about the order in which you put the cards with stock up on the bottom of your library, so sometimes it's worth paying attention to. But yeah, in this case we should have everything we need in hand already. So something like a Get Lost, level up Talent would probably be the scariest play. Or maybe an Elspeth. Another Exercise. So we're at 8, opponent keeping up some mana, since they want to answer the Restless Reef, no doubt. So this seems like a good turn for Deadly Cover-Up. Opponent's not going to want to draw with their token production here. Is this optional? It is not. So if they make a token with Fountain Port, it plays into our game plan. Is the Innocence optional? Also not optional. So yeah, we'll see how they plan to win the game. No end of turn token. And there's Elspeth. It's gonna make 2 tokens, draw 2 cards. Can take out one of them now, I guess. And then now just play the Avarice, and that should be game. But we could also answer Elspeth with a Bitter Triumph. And there we go, awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have a fine hand. Some ram, some removal, some card draw and a sweeper. Facing a ramp deck, likely of the Badger Mole variety. So, not super interested in using Bitter Triumph on the lighter elves. Gonna try and catch it with a Deadly Cover-Up. That is a lot of elves. Alright, so next turn we can already sweep those up. This turn, already have 2 lands in hand. I may want the Deceit. Might actually want land plus Deceit over the Hex when we have 2 cover-ups and a Bitter Triumph in hand already. Opponent has to be aware of a potential cover-up. Familiar can also activate to pick it back up. But yeah, they're going all out here, hoping we don't have the sweeper. Turns out we do. And our opponent's gonna have a hard time coming back from this. Wild Guides with Offspring. Could be a good turn for Deceit. Bounce the token, see what they're working with. Sure. Still gonna name Demon here. And they had a Crater Hoof left, so that would have certainly won the game if we didn't have a turn 4 cover-up thanks to Terminus. Or a Boroid's a perfect top deck. Wild Guide can still pick up an extra counter as well. Although we have the answers we need. So let me pay 3. And then Hex. I don't think I need the extra life. Hit you for 5, and then Restless Reef can also help close out the game. And that'll do it. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with what looks like a keeper. Turn to removal, some card draw into a cover-up. Facing Kithkin. Alright, that's exciting. So our sweeper should be effective. Bitter Triumph can also answer Ajani, their Planeswalker, which can make Kithkin. This could also just be white aggro, I suppose. And then, yeah, probably already worth it to keep a Bitter Triumph. See if they have any auras. Could have also main phase Bitter Triumph if I'm afraid of a protection spell here. Opponent did not pump the figure. And now Aerialist, that one has built-in protection. Okay, so yeah, bit of a scary turn still with the double strike coming up. Could have saved myself 3 damage by taking out the spider in my turn. Was waiting to see if they maybe had some auras they wanted to deploy. Now Deceit might be better than Stock Up. Just to see what they're working with. Alright, they have Feather, which is not the end of the world. Seam Rip, we don't care about. Ethereal Armor can represent more damage. So I'll probably take that one. And Kivero's perfect. Now I do not have a Restless Reef in my mana base, so Kivero might go for Deceit instead of Excruciator. Because otherwise I might struggle to mill the opponent out before we deck ourselves. Figure levels up. So I'm still taking 8. That's a healthy amount. I mean, I guess there's still the argument for Excruciator because it flies, so it can actually block the Aerialist. If I go for Deceit, I can bounce the Feather of Flight, but then I'm also kind of priced into taking it. And our opponent can still fly the Aerialist with Vendor, putting a counter on it, or a enchantments. So, kind of like Excruciator, even though I don't have a clear plan for closing out the game. Figure levels up. Can jump, because I'm planning to wipe the board. Another cover-up could be useful. So you can see what we're working with. I'll go for the Weaver here. They have double vendor, scavenger, and then another vendor in library. So feather is a card draw effect. Yeah, that's interesting. So our opponent's going to have to pace their threats. I think I gotta stock up and then hope to find one of our mill cards, basically. Restless Reef will do. And then Deceit versus Kivero. Probably Deceit first. And then they did not have any protection spells left, so I can keep up the Hex. And yeah, Restless Reef should do it next turn, so got lucky to still have one left. And our opponent scoops it up. Yeah, they know Restless Reef is incoming. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. Hand is functional. Got the early removal, stock up for card draw. Facing black-green, could be a Grindier matchup. Could be Reanimator. I see elves. Self-mill elves, no less. Dignitary doesn't make mana yet. But next turn they can mill to enable it. So I'm still gonna use the Hex to be efficient in case we draw some 2-drop we want to cast. Like a Deceit. Check out their hands, and then maybe get it back with Kivero. Alright, so we've got double Analyst to mill, as well as Lorwyn, and then Gloom Ripper as a potential finisher. Opponent's probably running the Convoke reanimation spell as well. So if I grab Analysts, maybe cover up can get the one from hand later. Sure. Opponent does play Lorwyn first. Double Twilight Diviner, and we drew Excruciator, which I'm now looking to discard. Because Cavern of Souls probably wants to name a type on Kivero, so it can make blue or black for Deceit. So then human is fine. Because there's no overlapping types, this is just a demon. Alright, finds land. Probably just take another land. Or I can go for another Kivero. Just so one can be used on Deceit and the other on Excruciator, but I don't have a way to discard it at the moment. I think we just want lands. I might end up regretting this Cavern on Human if I want to hardcast Excruciator. The Gloom Ripper is also looking pretty scary now with a full graveyard. And that's all lanes. So next turn I can cover up. there's a Gloom Ripper in the graveyard, so we can try to extract that one. Looks like they're gonna cast it. How many elves are we talking about? 9 between play and graveyard, so that's a significant amount of damage. Yep. Well, at least they're down to 1 card in hand. Make sure to leave Deceit in the graveyard. And they did not mill the Convoke card. I think Gloom Ripper's still the scariest at this point. They do have the bidding in hand. So now they need 8 mana to cast it. It looks like the list we featured on the channel a couple weeks ago. So they're still 2 mana away, found a discard outlet, but now I could also Kivero in the meantime, making sure to cast it for, well, double blue doesn't matter as long as it's double black. And then I still like Deceit over anything in the opponent's graveyard, I think. And yeah, opponent has seen enough, can make them discard their reanimation spell. And then it's going to take us a few extra turns to cast Excruciator, but the Restless Reef can then get the job done. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with what looks like a Keeper. Got some early removal. Stories hoping to draw into Excruciator or maybe Deceit, so we can discard them, set up Kivero. And we've got our Restless Reef, so that can maybe help close out the game after getting back an Excruciator or casting it. Opponent on the Sultai Self-Mill deck, it seems. So, not our favorite matchup. Found the Excruciator at least. Opponent has their own Kivero, which can also be used on my Excruciator, but I doubt they're going to be going for that play. Instead, discarding Bringer, so next turn they can already bring it back, triggering Terror of the Peaks in the process. So that's terrifying. If I discard Excruciator and we get it back, it's of course not going to trigger since it wasn't cast. But yeah, wouldn't be a bad idea to set up our graveyard a little bit, so we at least get something back. Opponent found another Terror of the Peaks, so they're maybe going for the one-hit KO. Best I can do is find a copy of Cover-Up to exile their stuff. I could discard another Kivero to get more value out of the graveyard. Maybe even copy an opposing Terror of the Peaks. Can be one way to steal a game. Opponent does go for another Formidable Speaker first. Discarding the Terror. And getting a backup Kivero, so we can make them discard it. So while I could Kivero my Excruciator and get us both down to 6 cards, then next turn our opponent casts Kivero and just burns me to death with the Terror triggers. So instead what I could do is Winter Night Stories, discard another Kivero, and then if they Kivero the Excruciator, we can copy the Terrors and return the favor. And then discard to hand size. Don't have any creatures left. Stock up can go. Don't think I'll need the full playset. I did not find Cover-Up, which would have been the card to find here. So yeah, opponent goes for Bringer, but now my Kiveros can copy Terror. And the way the stack works here, active players trigger go on the stack first, non-active players go on the stack last, and will resolve first. So we have 20 damage exactly going on the stack, which will resolve before the opponents. So yeah, sometimes you gotta use the sneaky tactics to win against Terror of the Peaks, because otherwise this is a pretty tough matchup, especially if we cannot find our cover-up in time. Okay, we're on the draw, hand seems fine. We've got removal, card draw, Kivero to combo with Deceit or Excruciator. Opponent on a green deck. Leyline Weaver, I'm happy to remove here, slow the opponent down. Don't want to stare down a turn 3 Ouroboros. Gonna be a few turns before we can cover up, so gotta hope to survive until then. Avarice is good to have. Already have a Restless Reef as well. Stock up is gonna get countered. And there's Ouroboros. Kivero turning into an Ouroboros is also a pretty powerful play. So I kind of feel forced to draw 3 with Avarice just to hit my land drop for next turn. And we can play a tapped land, Sewers versus second Reef. Make it Sewers. And Deceit would also be good alongside Kivero, but I can just cast it. So I'll just keep it on top. Plan next turn is probably to cover up. Will be without Collect Evidence, but didn't really want to exile the Deceit anyway. Alright, Mockingbird copy Ouroboros is powerful, but now our opponent is tapped out, so the coast is clear. And yeah, Kivero into Ouroboros is still a decent play. Probably gonna start with a 6-mana Deceit. As the Riddler draws 2, also quite good. I mean, now I could cover up, exile Riddler out of the opponent's deck, so we don't have to deal with it anymore. That's also reasonable. Should have played the tapped Reef then. Or Deceit, put some pressure on them, get rid of the Riddler anyway. Yeah, let's try this. Alright, and luckily they didn't have a second Riddler. Nature's Rhythm still good. Can, I guess, grab a Riddler as well. But still gonna take this one first. And then we can maybe exile the Rhythm once it's in the graveyard. So we don't have to deal with the Harmonize side of it. Still going for X equals 4. Which is Ouroboros. Okay, so attack for 5, cover up. It's maybe a bit transparent. And get the Nature's Rhythm. And they didn't have many Ouroboros left to begin with. So it looks like a pretty normal blue-green Badger Mold deck with a couple counters. Okay. Kivero exiling Ouroboros is also quite powerful, as it starts out with 4 power, so then it goes to 8 and then 16. So that's also a pretty fast clock. But our opponent's gonna pack it in. I'll take it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We have what looks like a Keeper. Bitter Triumph can discard Excruciator. Look for Kivero. Opponent maybe on black-white skeletons. So yeah, that's a tougher matchup. They have a pretty fast clock, some haste creatures with the Corpses of the Lost. So we need to find a lot of interaction. But then once we Excruciator, we should be in the clear. So, opponent did not have corpses, so they might have a bunch of auras in hand. Yeah, I mean, I could just use a Bitter Triumph here. Do they have Graveyard Hate? Not that I know of, but they might have updated the deck. Yeah, I mean, most of their creatures should die to the Hex, so I think I do Bitter Triumph here. And save myself the damage. Alright, so opponent might just be sitting on a pile of removal. So, nothing I actively want to discard with Winter Night Stories, so we'll stock up. Find Deceit and Restless Reef. Already have 2 card draw effects in hand. Want to keep hitting my land drops, and Restless Reef can also help close out the game. So opponent is a United Battlefront deck, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, there it is. So they're not going to have any requiring hexes to take out Restless Reef. But yeah, that was an amazing hit. Corpses plus case, making an extra skeleton. So we've got our work cut out for us. Now, I could use hex on one of the skeletons. And then if I cavern on elemental, I can still bounce the other. But then of course they also get to solve the case. So yeah, tricky spot. I do want to Deceit this turn to be able to set up Kevero for next turn. Could also just use the discard mode, play tapped Restless Reef and then Hex and just take 3. Maybe take another corpses from their hand. Although they didn't seem to have it on turn 3, so maybe it's another Battlefront that they have instead. Alright, take the Battlefront. Actually had the opportunity to gain 2 life, that's a missed interaction here. With the Hex we could have blinded onto Deceit just for the free life gain. I'll do it now. So we should have been at 14, hopefully it's not gonna matter. So their hand is pretty weak. At least for this matchup. Cavern's still probably gonna name Demon in case we top deck it later. I mean, I could also just go for Excruciator, I don't have to Deceit. Since it's not like we're afraid of our opponent answering the Restless Reef at the moment. So, yeah, I think we can just go for the throat here, as it were. And just Kevero the Excruciator. Alright, opponent's gonna scoop it up. But yeah, what would have happened, opponent's down to 6 cards, they can maybe remove the Excruciator, attack with a skeleton, but it's not enough for lethal. And then, turn after, Restless Reef can put our opponent down to 0 cards after their draw step, so they would still get a second attack step. But as it stands, there would be another attack for 4, so that would not be lethal. Plus I could maybe draw into some more interaction too, which would be great. But yeah, again, because our opponent doesn't have a clean answer to Restless Reef, at most they can have a nowhere to run. It should be relatively safe to set up the attack on the following turn. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a fine hand. Some good early removal, can maybe discard the Excruciator against blue-red aggro, so yeah, let's just Hex in case they have some counter spell. Not too many hasty 2-drops in the red decks anymore nowadays. Keep a Bitter Triumph, and we drew Kevero, so this is a perfect curve. Can Bitter Triumph discard Excruciator, and turn 4 Kevero, and then Avarice to mill the opponent out, basically. Counter spells can maybe interfere. Opponent more of a prowess aggro deck. Alright, so we're just waiting for them to present the target for Bitter Triumph now. There's a Slick Shot. Happily take 1, don't want to have a big fight on the stack with our opponent potentially having counter spells and other pump spells. Right, a Lightning Strike goes face, that's still acceptable. Of course, if they tap out, I'll Bitter Triumph. Turn 4 Excruciator is a little bit more efficient than casting it for 6 mana. We're still at 15, we've got a 4/4 flyer. So our opponent needs to basically counter the Avarice and make me deck myself. Hellkite, I'm actually happy to chump. And a talent, so Coast is clear. And a Hex for good measure. So can play Terminus, play Avarice, still keep up Hex. Opponent's got 5 cards left. I mean, I could be a little more patient and wait for the opponent to have fewer cards left, so they don't get to use the cards they draw before they're out of cards in library. But at 15 life with a Hex in hand, I feel pretty good about this. How likely are they to have a counterspell, I guess, is the question we have to ask ourselves. Not very. Yeah, maybe I should just wait. Can also use Avarice to have a look at my deck. Five cards left. That's a land. So I can take another hit for 4. Opponent can return a burn spell. That's 3 more damage. So if I survive next turn, assuming no instant speed burn spells, we should still mill them out before we die. So I don't think I Avarice this turn. I can wait until next turn. Although there's also the chance I can maybe search up something useful, put it on top, and then cast it next turn. Would that matter? What's the disaster scenario? I make my opponent draw 3, they draw into a flurry of burn spells and just win next turn. But those same burn spells they can still cast in their upkeep. I guess there's cards like Slick Shot they could also have. I'll wait one more turn. But this is a close call. Yeah, this would have been a slightly more comfortable situation with an extra removal spell, like a Deadly Cover-Up in hand. Opponent's going to bounce a Terminus. That's acceptable. I'll level up talents. Can get Boomerang Basics back. Goes for Lightning Strike. Okay, so that's a little scary, since that's 3 more damage they can cast in their upkeep. Although now Deceit should basically lock it up. Can make my opponent draw 3, and then afterwards check out their hand with Deceit. They'll have 0 cards left in library. And hopefully, by taking 1 burn spell, they can burn me out from 7 life. And I'll play the Terminus just because. Might actually be a mistake if they have a spell snare here. Opponent has the shock. So please don't have 3 lightning strikes. They have 2 lightning strikes, okay, so they can put us to 2 and then lose the game. So it ended up being super close. All these matchups against red aggro have been. And yeah, we had a pretty good hand with a turn 4 Doomsday Excruciator, so couldn't really have asked for more. So yeah, this matchup seems pretty tough, but still managed to get there a few times. In general, I think the deck is pretty well positioned in the best of 1 standard meta. It's essentially a control deck with a combo finish, so we don't give the opponent a ton of time to draw out of it once we cast our initial board wipe. The combo of Kevero with Deceit is amazing, giving us early interaction with the elemental, and then on turn 4 we can get it back once again, even if we don't draw the Doomsday Excruciator to go with it. So that seems like a great pairing, and occasionally you can use Kevero to your advantage if you're playing against another Reanimator deck, like we saw with the Terror of the Peaks. So yeah, overall, can't say enough good things about the deck. Against pure control decks, I'm mostly hoping to dodge the blue-white variety, since those will have access to a bunch of demolition fields which can deal with Restless Reef. Against the Jeskai variant, I feel a bit better, since they're less likely to have clean answers to Restless Reef. So then once we resolve an uncounterable Excruciator through Cavern of Souls, the Restless Reef is more likely to get the job done. But those matchups are of course going to be a bit trickier, especially if the opponent is packing a lot of counter spells, maybe some Graveyard Hate as well to stop your Kivero synergies. So those are the main matchups I would fear with this Excruciator deck, but it's also something that can be addressed after sideboard with more copies of Duress to take away key cards out of the opponent's hand. So yeah, for now, I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.